Hi, and welcome to another episode of Asked Map. We are happy to be here and answering any questions that you may have, like we do every week. My name is Courtney Lewis. I'm a prior director of admissions at a medical school in the Southwest, and I am joined by our co-founder, Rachel Grubbs. Thank you for being on the call.
Hello, I love being here.
Yeah.
My
How are you doing today?
Great. I left all my windows open last night, despite it being like in the 30s. So my house is chilly and I'm drinking coffee, but I'm a polar bear. I'm enjoying it.
Nice. That's very seasonal and festive.
Yes.
We're still too warm here in New Mexico to realize that Christmas is right around the corner. So,
yeah, I remember being so heartbroken as a child when I realized it didn't just automatically snow on Christmas like the movies indicated it would, but it is usually chilly on Christmas.
You're lucky there. All right. And then Dr. Scott Wright, who is here and has a background in TMD, SAS, and being a director of admissions as well. So welcome.
Hi. How's it going, everybody? It's always good to be here. We say this a lot, that this is our favorite time of the week. Such an energizing activity for us, and we love answering your questions. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to helping people out today.
All right. So if you have never joined before, it's an open platform. We're willing to answer anything and everything: med school application, prepping, pathways, journeys, and everything in between. So if you have questions, just type them in and we will try to discuss them, answer them, and get going.
Wow.
I know. It's probably the most quiet I've ever seen.
It is the most
Some days they're more shy than others. Some days are 2 days out from finals.
Yeah. I was going to say we're probably in full prep mode for finals and graduation and everything like that. And so
here I did see one come in that we can dig into.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a non-traditional, about to graduate with a BS in bio. Congratulations. My GPA is a 3.9, which is great. I'm using the Blueprint Live course to study for the MCAT, but I only have 85 clinical shadowing hours. Are these enough hours? I'm going to leave this one open-ended to whoever wants to take it on. I can share as well.
Yeah, I can chime in first. So, Jelani, sometimes I have a history in test prep. And so in addition to MCAT, I've done GMAT. And in GMAT, there are math problems that they don't actually expect you to solve. They just expect you to analyze them and then decide, did we give you enough data to solve? And I'm saying all of that because this is a good example of an insufficient data question. I don't think we can tell you if 85 hours are enough for a couple reasons. One is clinical and shadowing aren't the same thing. And a lot of people get them confused. But clinical is observing a physician, clinical is personal hands-on patient care experience, and shadowing is observing. So I'd be interested to know how many of those were shadowing versus how many of them were you firsthand experience with a patient. The other is enough is subjective. It's not about I hit a certain number of hours. It's about I had enough meaningful experiences and it made enough impact on me that I'm going to have rich patient care stories to use in my essays. 85 sounds a little light to me, but it's possible if they were really impactful hours, and only you really know whether or not that was the case.
Yeah, and I will say that I agree with that completely, Rachel, and Jelani. What I would say is, or maybe it's Yelani since it's Spanish, right? Yelani, maybe. Anyway, I'm sorry. However you pronounce your name, I would say that admissions committees are definitely going to look at what you say about those experiences and how rich they were and how much reflection you give to those experiences. However, I will also say that they are used to seeing hundreds of hours of experiences. And so when somebody comes in that has a notably lower amount of hours, even if they're reflecting well and telling these nice stories and stuff, I still think it can affect how that sort of plays out with the admissions committee, because they're just so used to seeing, a lot more than that. And it could easily, not that it comes down to the number all the time, but it could be a little bit of a red flag if a admissions committee sees that there's only that, that limited number of hours. So just be aware of that. I would say, definitely something that you're going to need to probably get more experiences. Hopefully that's something that you're excited about, because that's where, motivation comes from, those experiences often. So, so just think about that.
Yeah. We see a wide range of hours that come in, so it's a little bit hard to say. I've seen Army medics that were, combat medics. They have 10,000 plus hours, all the way down to a couple of shadowing experiences that totaled, 16, 20, 50 hours. So balance is good. All right. Any other questions coming in?
Good.
Oh, okay. Kyle, what GPA should I aim for to get into medical school? This is an interesting question. It's going to differ depending on your academic record. So when we receive your application, we are going to be able to look at all of the coursework you've taken, the times in which you took it, the course load, and kind of map that out. The reason that it's hard to give a definitive number on this is because we leave it as med school somewhat open-ended, because we don't want to rule out, career changers or non-traditional students or people who may struggle the first semester or two, where they already lose their shot there. We want to be able to explore all options and all applicants that come in. So that's why it's a little bit difficult to find a definitive GPA number, but we do have the metrics for the national averages of matriculants, which, that means there's people above and below that number, but it's around it's 3.6, I know, on DO side, and
probably 3.7-ish on the MD side. And I would add to that, Courtney, that if you look at it statistically, if you look at the average GPA for entering students into medical schools, MD wise, it's usually around 3.7, 3.75. And the standard deviation to that is about 0.2 or so. And so if you think about it in that way, the vast majority of students are in the 3.5 and above area. Maybe DO, it might be 3.4 and above area, but statistically, if you look at it that way. So I would say, Kyle, if you're aiming for a GPA, aim for some 3.5 or better. And obviously you always want to aim at the perfect, but noting that a lot of people won't get that. But if you'll try to get in that area, 3.5 and above, that's a good area to be in. Doesn't mean that you won't get in if you're below that. It just means that that's going to be an area where a lot of students, a huge number of students, are in that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and depending on their evaluation process and when they kind of dig into the materials, sometimes that front number can carry some weight and kind of put you in a category. But we do have the opportunity to look again at course load, see if you had some, really heavy semesters and things like that. And if you were doing experience or working full time or doing other things while in school. But yeah, if you're asking for what would put you in a competitive range and what you can aim for if you have all opportunities available to you, I would agree, 3.5 and above, if possible. Okay. Next question, if we have one. Okay, Adam, do international students generally make it off the waitlist? I'm a Canadian non-traditional with a physical therapy master's waitlisted at a USDO. What are some things I can do to get off the waitlist? Anybody want to tackle this one?
Prayer.
Get your checkbook out. No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm just joking.
I know.
It's a joke.
Yeah. So, I mean, Adam, do international students generally make it off the wait list? There's no way we can answer a question that general. Decisions are going to vary year to year, school to school, committee to committee. Do students generally make it off the wait list? Typically, a few do and a lot don't, right? That's the reality. So, kind of from this time of year onward, our rough rule of thumb is if you haven't had any interviews or you're starting to get a lot of wait lists and rejections by American Thanksgiving, which was last Thursday. I know yours was a little earlier, Adam. That's typically when we say start thinking about reapplying, which doesn't mean you have to give up hope. It just means start assessing your application and figuring out what could I do to make it stronger before May so that if you have to apply again, you have time. What are some things you can do off the wait list? I mean, honestly, there's not a lot. Courtney, one thing I've heard you mention is if they have any like live sessions, first looks, go get FaceTime. If you have a significant update, so not just, hey, I really want to go there, because they know, right? But here's a thing that's happened in my life that I think significantly improves my application and I want to share. You could send that. But yeah, this, in my opinion, is the hardest part of the entire application process is the waiting.
Yeah. It's a hurry up and wait situation. It is really difficult. And I can tell you, my years as a director, each year was a bit different on how many ultimately I ended up needing from the wait list, because it's student driven. So if I offer a seat to somebody, I'm full. The only movement that will happen is, kind of when the multiple acceptance list comes out and things like that, where people have to lock down and not be holding 2 seats at once. They have to release that other seat. And so you never quite know how much movement you're going to have. And so stay in contact with them, not unprofessionally amount, of contact, but, if they have shadowing days, if they have presentations or opportunities or second looks and things like that, make sure that you participate in those to show them that you're still interested, you're seeking additional information and chances to get to know them better. I'm not sure it really has anything to do with being Canadian or non-traditional. If they put you on the wait list, that means that they would be comfortable having you in the class. Yep. So it's likely more of a situation of the seats were full and, that it's just, you never really know how quickly things are going to fill up, the deposit timeline and things like that. And so unfortunately, they didn't have a seat at that point, or they wanted to kind of see what was coming in throughout the cycle and they kind of withhold certain offers. So you can definitely hold out hope. I would encourage you to follow what Rachel said, which is at least be thinking and actively still doing things, participating in things, strengthening, because if you get into med school, it's going to be helpful. If you don't and you have to reapply, at least you've done some things to strengthen your foundation and update your application as well. So best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Arturo. Okay. I've been extremely reluctant to ask this. Okay. But do you all have any advice or information for those of us who are currently working in other field? I work in aerospace and I'm trying hard to get into med. Okay. Well, I mean, we meet with these, people in very similar situations as you all the time. So you're not the only one that's wanting to do this as a career changer. It certainly can be done. You need to be thoughtful and strategic. Usually your time is a bit more limited and there's a lot of things that go into preparing you so you have a solid foundation prior to entering med school and even applying. But anybody want to go into any specifics? I can take it too.
Yeah, I'll chime in. So, Arturo, first, I'm not sure why you felt reluctant, but I'm really glad you did. We work with so many career changers, so many so-called non-traditionals, and especially with you coming from a background in aerospace. I mean, people can come from any walk of life. There's someone I really admire on Instagram who's actually, I think she just finished med school, so she's a resident now, who was an actress before she became a physician. So like anything can lead to anything. But, you know, you're in aerospace, so you're probably no stranger to rigorous math and science and a lot of discipline studying. So you've got that going for you. And you didn't mention where you are in the process. You're probably going to have to go back and take some courses that just weren't included in your degree that now are recommended for pre-med. But that is currently a lower concern for me. What I would say is, if you feel like you want to change careers, one of the best ways to motivate yourself, but also confirm that desire, is go get clinical experience, right? So before you think about, do I cut my job or quit my job? Do I cut my job hours? Do I try to manage, a post-bacc program on top of a full-time job? And if you're already doing those things, you're not in trouble. But I'm saying if you're at the very beginning, what I would say do first is go find a part-time clinical job or clinical volunteering. Go get yourself around patients. Because if this goes the way you think it's going to go, that's going to be the highlight of your week. You're going to love it, and it's going to fuel you to do all this work to change careers. Now, worst case scenario, you get in there and you go, you know what? I realized I love taking care of my grandma, but I don't love taking care of other people's grandmas. And if that's the case, won't you be glad that you found out before you dropped $50,000 on a post-bacc? So that's my advice. Go interact with patients. It can be volunteer. It can be paid. Just go, it doesn't have to be in a hospital. It could be hospice, a senior home. There's lots of ways to get clinical experience, but I would say start there. And good luck.
I agree completely.
Yeah, definitely doable. I think probably Dr. Wright, you would agree. I've matriculated people with all kinds of different backgrounds and different ages, different pathways, and
coming from so many different places.
Many. Yeah. But you add richness to the class, and this life experience that you've been able to have in this career provides you with a lot of really valuable life experience, working in a team, working in the real world, and also just if this is a path that you want to do, there's that grit to get it done. And so it can be helpful in helping kind of get you through this process. But yeah, we've matriculated people coming from all types of different professions.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Carol, my experience with patient informs the majority of my why, but it wasn't in a clinical setting. I created a nonprofit and I helped people increase communication with their docs, not clinical, right? Correct. Yeah.
Not clinical.
Not clinical, super cool.
And interesting. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I would say any school that sees this is going to view it very favorably. And a lot of the med schools do look for community volunteer efforts and initiatives, and will value that very highly. But yeah, this wouldn't fall under that category. It would be more in the volunteer section.
Agreed.
All right, Jordan Chuckles. Hi, I graduated in 3 years and I'm currently in my senior gap year. I'm planning to apply in 2023. Currently working full-time with MCAT studying. What are the best ways to demonstrate leadership? Okay. I was not expecting that question after.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, I mean, I know kind of what I've seen from other applicants. Usually they had leadership or elected positions in clubs and organizations that they were part of in school, sometimes at work they were able to, get promoted or be in a managerial position, taking on lead in research in the lab that they're working on. Those are a handful of things that I've encountered over the past, number of years. Anybody have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think you have to think broadly about what leadership is. So you said you're working full time. So what do you do at work? Do you have? Are you doing leadership type things? Even if you're not a leader in terms of your title, if you are on a team and you are the lead for that team, or there was a project and you were the lead for that project, that's leadership. So think broadly about what you've done and what you are doing, and really emphasize that. And I would say, if you're working full time, go to your boss at work and say, hey, I'm really interested in developing leadership skills, and anything that you can do to help me do that, I would I'd be very happy to do, bite into that. So but you got to think broadly about what leadership means.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a common mistake that a lot of people think it has to be the officer of a club, and it can be that, but that's just one way. And there's only so many officer roles. When I was in college admissions, I knew some boys from St. Ignatius in the Cleveland area, where in their clubs, every junior was vice president and every senior was president. And they thought that was some magical lead to leadership. Like, college admissions people don't often look at students from the same school at the same time. Right. I mean, it is so common to say, we only take 8 from St. Ignatius, so let's look at all 40 of them at once. Like, they can't see through that crap. I mean, that did not do those guys any favors. In the grand scheme of college admissions, it wasn't much of a scandal, right? We've seen worse. But I think, what a weird, stupid thing to cheat about when it honestly doesn't carry that much weight. Like, I don't care about your title with leadership. I care about what you did. So, like Courtney and Scott are saying, it might be that you were the officer of club, or it might be that you took the lead on a project, or it might be that you coached little kids soccer. I mean, that's leadership. So you just have to kind of think, and if, hopefully for these essays, you're already digging deep and being really reflective. But if you're having trouble, ask your friends and family, ask people who love you, ask your coworkers, what they have to say about their leadership. And hopefully they're going to be honest enough to say, actually, here's some areas you can improve. Or, when I really felt like I could count on you and look up to you was, and maybe that'll springboard some stories.
Okay, Bridget. Hi. Do you think my structured post-bacc will give me a good chance to enter medical school? I will be taking repeat courses and upper level classes. This is a bit hard to answer with the amount of information that we have, because we don't want to lead anyone astray. And there's a lot of factors that go into somebody's academic profile and length and time and what's going to be best. And so if you needed to repeat courses and kind of strengthen your foundation, or have something that displayed that you could handle a certain volume of courses at the same time, it's probably going to be helpful if you perform well in that at an upper division. But to say it's going to give you a good chance, it would probably improve them, but that's about all we can say with that. Anybody else want to chime in? It's kind of hard to answer.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
Insufficient data.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Turth. For getting into med schools, what exams I need to take other than MCAT, Casper Preview, and AAMC Preview? Professional readiness exam. Other than MCAT, when should I take the other 3 tests?
April, May.
Yeah. So it varies, right? You may not have to take Casper or Preview. You listed Preview twice. I assume you mean the Casper Duet Snapshot Suite, right? All the ones that come from Altus, which I guess now is going to be Acuity.
Yeah.
And then there's the one from the AAMC that, is the preview exam. So you can look on their websites to see which schools require them. I just would say take it with a grain of salt, because right now it's probably listing things for the current cycle for students who want to enroll for 23. So these tests are newish, and each year more schools add. So just make sure that next year in the spring you look again. But yeah, typically I think of these tests as part of the secondary process. So you can do it earlier if you're ready and you've got the space, because they do tend to open in the spring. But sometime in late spring, early summer is probably when you're taking these other non-MCAT tests are referred to as situational judgment tests. And that's when you're taking those.
Yep. Okay. Amy, let's see. How should I explain to medical schools why I don't have a committee letter from my undergrad uni because I wasn't qualified as a non-traditional student? And how is it viewed? Do I explain in apps or in interviews? This is a great question, and it definitely comes up. And I think the answer will probably differ school to school. But we do understand, I would say, I think there is consensus that we do understand that not everybody will qualify for a committee letter, either based on missing the deadline, being on a different timeline, being a non-traditional student, and things like that. So I think if you have a reason for it, it'll be just fine. I don't think I've personally, I never ruled out anybody just because they didn't have a letter, because I didn't say it was a requirement. I said you could use this or that. And if you are able to still submit the required letters, it's not a committee packet, then that still qualifies. And I'm going to look at those and evaluate what you did provide. And so we understand that sometimes there's just extenuating circumstances that would impede somebody from getting a committee letter, and that it doesn't necessarily mean, it's not necessarily reflected of your preparedness or you as an applicant.
Yeah, and I would say too that I don't bring it up. I mean, I would just leave it, and if they ask in an interview, just respond to it. But I don't think you want to preempt that. It's not a big enough issue for you to worry about it. So number one, don't overthink this. It's fine. There's a lot of reasons why people get a committee letter or don't get a committee letter. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And so I would say just don't worry about it. And if for some reason a question comes up about it, just respond to it.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think we see it often enough that we're just all familiar with that being the case.
Yep.
What you shouldn't do, that I'm going to do right now, is rant about how committee letters are totally unjust. I have trouble with letters, period, honestly. I mean, I understand why they are helpful for admissions officers, but I have some doubt about their validity as a tool in general. And I definitely think there are too many schools that have maybe not random, but highly varying rules, right? So, there's a school in the Northeast that a lot of you are familiar with that has very, very stringent rules on GPA and MCAT that are essentially eliminating a bunch of people. Like, the school is sending the message that if you don't have well above average stats compared to matriculates, that you can't even apply. And that just makes no sense to me. Yeah. So those people aren't forbidden from applying, but they're not getting their school support. And I don't understand why an undergraduate institution gets to make the decision. I think a med school should make the decision. So, I know obviously, Amy, you didn't express any anger or negativity. You just stated facts. I'm just ranting a little on your behalf. I think that's a baloney rule. But yeah, just dig up your individual letters and you'll be good.
Yep. Okay, Rochelle, how can I start finding shadowing opportunities? Great question. It's a hustle. You make phone calls, you stop into offices, you send emails, you ask a physician that you know if themselves or anybody that they know in another practice or hospital setting would be available or open to having you shadow them. You can also look at your straight kind of licensing registration or directory to find physicians in your area that you can use to start contacting them. There are also professional organizations that a lot of physicians are part of that are national organizations, and they have chapters within the state, sometimes within the city, and you can contact them. Usually they are very open to giving back and having people shadow them and strengthening pre-meds and medical students coming and following in their footsteps. So those would be right off the bat what I would suggest in kind of reaching out. But a lot of it will fall on you and just initiating the contact and, not being afraid to hear the word no and just reaching out early, often, and continuing to seek out opportunities that you think will help provide a global perspective for you and better prepare you for med school and give you the experience that you need. Anybody else have anything? Oh, you're muted, Dr. Wright.
I agree completely.
Okay.
And good
All
luck.
right.
I think it might be Rachel, not Rochelle, although
Okay.
she doesn't spell it my way. But as a fellow Rachel, I think that's a Rachel. But anyway, good luck. It's really hard. Just keep knocking on doors.
Yep. Okay, Jonathan, who should read your primary and secondary essays to make sure they are good? Should you use a paid service or have someone you trust read it? Okay, well, I think we can stay impartial on this.
Yeah,
Obviously, we provide services like that where, any one of the three of us plus 2 additional people could look it over and give you feedback on what you've written. But you can definitely ask others to read it. The more people you ask, the more opinions you're going to get. And so I think being strategic in who you ask is helpful. I don't know. I mean, I think most people's go-to would be family members, which is good and bad. I would say I kind of personally view it. One, they know you, so they can glean probably or read into things or understand the context more than somebody who doesn't know you and may not be able to give you just kind of the shock value of the initial read, not knowing somebody.
Yep.
But, sometimes it's good to have their perspective and see if it accurately represents you.
And take advantage of your, if you're at a school right now, your pre-med advisor, sometimes the career office will do that. They're not always well equipped to know what a personal statement for a medical school essay should look like. But I agree with what Courtney said. I think, limit the number of people you have do it and keep in mind where they're coming from, what their context is for giving you advice. You really want to try to get advice from people who kind of know what's going on and what it's like and what should be and in a personal statement. So that's the value of your pre-med advisor at your school or paid service, whether it's us or somebody else. So just keep in mind, but I would limit that number of people because, as Courtney said, you're going to get, if you have 20 people read it, you're going to get 20 opinions, and sooner or later it's going to start driving you crazy. So
well, and as you ask people to read it, maybe have a couple of very specific things that you want them to look for. Like, what's the tone? What overall tone do you get from this? Is it negative? Is it positive? Do I seem passionate? Do I seem empathetic? Are these examples good ones to use? So overall tone of it would be helpful to understand, to make sure that you're not negatively projecting yourself or coming across in a way that you weren't meaning to, but it's read that way to others. And thought process and flow. It's not choppy. It makes sense how you ordered things and the experiences that you mention, and that the reader comes away knowing that you actually answered the question, that they can glean that from what you've written. And I think those three, if they could give you some feedback on that, should help, and not leave it just open-ended. You should put this word here, or I don't really like this sentence, and blah, 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 which, could be modified, but is not, everybody's writing style will be different. You need to know kind of overarching feedback, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. One of my rules of thumb with admissions essays is the people who review it should respect you more than they love you. It just, parents in particular, they can't be unbiased in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this to all pre-meds. In the grand scheme of humanity, in terms of your brightness, your discipline, your willingness to help people, you're special, right? Among pre-meds, those things don't make you special. So often the challenge with family is they want to focus on your attributes because your attributes are wonderful and like they really admire you, but those attributes don't make you stand out as a pre-med. And we're not trying to have you be unique. We're trying to have you share an authentic story. So, again, if you ask 10 advisors, you'll get 10 answers. But here at Med School HQ and Mappd, we believe in the narrative. So I've seen parents say, well, why'd you write about all these patients? I want to hear about you. I'm like, well, that's what activities essays are for. We're going to hear about you there. The personal statement is why medicine. And I've seen many students write really great essays that answer the wrong question. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think one of the classic pitfall to avoid when you're getting non-admissions expert help is just make sure they don't help you write a great essay answering not the question that's asked.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is your opportunity to kind of give us some insight beyond the numbers, beyond the listings and the categorization, and just give us some context, give us some background, provide us, with what you've learned and why this is important and where you want to go with it. And, whatever you want to answer in the why medicine, but this is your opportunity. It's kind of a teaser, if we could say, where it's like, okay, we like all of these numbers and, they had good coursework and wow, they've got a lot of experience hours. And this gives us, a bit of the soft side, the soft skills, a bit of context for you as a person and what your driver is to see if we do want to invite you for an interview. So take the opportunity to use it what it's for. Everything else has its purpose, and this is the purpose of the personal statement.
Yeah, and so while we're talking about getting essay help, I want to remind everyone, I just messed up the J in Application Jumpstart. Okay, so free workshop. It's a 5-week series that's an introduction to the application process. It starts Thursday, December 1st. So if you're watching live, that's tomorrow. And each week, Dr. Gray and Courtney and Scott and I and our other fellow advisor, Verinia, we're all going to be there, or at least some of us each week. And we're going to talk about every aspect of the application, from are you ready to apply to how to tackle your personal statement, how to do activities, how to handle interviews. And it's all going to be live and interactive. Very few slides, very little lecturing. We're going to give you some big picture concepts and then jump right into questions. So, Jonathan, you were saying, who can look at my personal statement? Well, we can't look at yours 100% top to bottom because we can't do that for hundreds of people at a free workshop. But we will be taking snippets from people who have drafts and doing live review on the spot. So, yeah, in addition to, the fact that we have paid services, we do try to offer something free to everyone. And this is the start of that. So come on down to Application Jumpstart and we can get you some feedback there.
Yep. Jan, how are re-application viewed? Okay, so re-applicants, I would think. I don't know. I'll jump in and I guess get us started. There's probably a number of different things. Again, the classic answer, it depends. I would say it's never a bad thing to see somebody reapply. That lets me know that they are interested in attending where I'm at, especially if it's somebody that, maybe they weren't successful in obviously gaining a seat in the prior cycle, but they called or they had an advising appointment and they asked, what can I do to strengthen my chances? I really want to attend here. And then I see evidence of them actually being teachable, taking that, applying it, doing all the hard work and coming back to me. I think that that's a benefit. I always viewed it very favorably to see that. And unfortunately right now, there's just not enough seats to go around. So it's hard to get in. It's very hard to get in just your first go round. It's just a competitive process, and sometimes timing or strategy or your application or things need to be changed, and sometimes it's just how it happened, and there weren't enough seats even though you were perfectly qualified. So I don't think it's bad. I wouldn't just copy paste everything exactly over, because in our software, we are able to see if you've applied to us before. How much we let it notify us of you being a re-applicant is totally at the discretion of the med schools. And so sometimes they don't want to know, and they want to look at the application as if it's fresh. So it would be something that you have to mention versus something that just is automated in their system. But Dr. Wright, you may have more kind of insight on how you guys did it or what too.
Yeah, I would say in general that re-applicants are not disadvantaged in the process. I think most admissions committees are going to give you the advantage of, what you have in your application. The fact that you're a re-applicant doesn't really necessarily have any negative impact on that. I think they're going to want to know maybe what you've done to improve your application. And that would be, part of the reflection process. They're going to want to see how self-aware you are and how reflective you are about, maybe the weaknesses of your application or whatever. And so, but I don't think that you need to worry about being a re-applicant. Just, try to identify any weaknesses, work on those, and move forward and keep going. I've known people who applied, I knew one applicant in particular who applied 4 times and got in on the 4th shot. So you never know.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, next question. If applying next cycle, how early to start the application? Now. You can't actually start filling it out. However, you can definitely start prepping for the components of the application long before it actually opens and you're wanting to hit submit. So anybody want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, completely agree. Roughly speaking, you want to start the application 18 months before you start med school. And this also got asked in the chat a different way. So just giving specifics. Most med schools start in July or August. So if you want to start in July or August of 2024, you should be starting to work on your application in roughly by January 2023. So that's the rough timeline. So even though you're not actually filling out applications until May, you're working on personal statements, you're working on activities, all of that is happening. We have students who have already been doing it for a month or 2 because their winter spring is going to be really busy. So they needed to start earlier. And every year there are people that come to me in April or May who say, hey, I had a crazy spring semester and the MCAT and I'm just now starting. Some of them get in. It's just not fun for them. Yeah. And also, I find that often their essays lack because the personal statement requires a lot of reflection. And the drafts that come out the best, the final versions that come out the best, had breathing time, right? So you do what we often refer to, I'm sure there's a technical term. I don't know what it is. I refer to it as the puke draft, just word vomit, right? Just, and you talk to your family and you talk to your friends and you ask them to tell you things about your childhood that are fuzzy memories for you until they tell you and it kickstarts something in your brain and you're like, I do remember saving that frog down by the creek or whatever, right? And then you go away from it for a few weeks and come back and your brain has been working on that problem while you were not directly on it. So yeah, I say start early, not because it's a 6-month job, but because I think it's a 6 or 8 week job that goes better if it's spaced out over time with breaks.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you guys, if you think about it, if you cram it all down into right before you need to hit submit, it's going to be a tremendous amount of work. If, there's typos, or you're just like, you know what, I don't have time to fill out this section as thoroughly as I could have. I just need to get it in. You're not giving yourself credit for a lot of things that could be really valuable to schools. You don't know like what specific things they may want to see evidence of or be looking for. And so you've already put in so much work. Make sure that you're proud of what you submit and you're putting your best foot forward for that. And don't try to cram it down into just a couple of days and think you're going to send it off. That's going to be really difficult. And then you're going to immediately get secondaries back. And so if you're not ready to be bogged down again with a tremendous amount of writing right after you did that intensive for the application, it's going to be a bit rough. And, it's maybe not the best way to plan for it. If you have to do it that way, obviously understandable. But if you're trying to plan it out, extend your timeline and actively work on things before they are due, which is sometimes not the college way, but needs to be done. And it's a good skill, and it will carry over into med school because you're going to have to do that there too.
Yeah,
but
vehement nods from Scott.
Yeah. And I do want to make a plug because I am seeing some of these questions that are coming in for people who are planning on filling out their application starting in May. We do have Application Academy, which is $600.
Yeah.
And we understand that's quite a bit. But with that, we host 10 sessions a week. We have office hours. We've got group peer critiques, reviews, where we'll pull up your personal statement. We'll pull up certain essays. We'll go over secondaries, and it can be anonymous. And everybody gives feedback. You're able to read other people's to inform, kind of what they're writing and what they're saying. So I would say, and from what we've heard, it's a tremendous value in just making sure that you're actively getting the things done that you need to ahead of time, having somebody proof them, getting different feedback, perspectives, things like that, and then being able to polish it before you need to submit it. So if that is of interest to you, it's just a tremendous opportunity, and it's a bunch of people who are also applying, and you guys kind of collaborate together as peers into putting your best foot forward. So not to be silly, but I really think it's very helpful if you're worried about how to navigate all of these different aspects. And, those of us that are instructors, we get to provide some actual direct feedback from what we read, what you submit, and things like that to give you something concrete.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, these are mostly free events, but of course we are going to mention the stuff we offer. And I've been talking to so many people about Application Academy in the last few weeks. And the number one piece of feedback I hear is, I had no idea group advising was even an option.
Yeah.
Right. So just the fact that it exists, like people don't realize, yeah, of course we have one-on-one, and one-on-one is a lot more because it takes up time, right? The advisor can only help one student at a time. But we really do try to think about the whole spectrum of economics. That's why we have so much that's for free. And then $600 is still a lot of money. I'm not acting like it's cheap. I'm just saying it's a lot cheaper than one-on-one.
Yeah. And I mean, every week for a year, if you want it, and office hours and TAs, where you're working with us and we're available to you that often, along with some of your peers. If you are really, really stressed, or you need kind of motivation boost or structure or, mentorship and things like that, just wanted to throw it out there, and we can move on to the next question so I don't feel like I'm trying to sell something. I'm trying to be helpful. Okay. For MC, should I be good if have 0 research experience, but over 2,500 hours of clinical experience? Okay, so research is generally not a requirement prior to entering med school. There are pre-meds that do research while in their undergrad or in a post-bacc or as they're waiting to get into medical school, but I would say more often than not, it is not a requirement.
Right.
So if you have 0, that is okay. And, if you're looking at med schools and you happen to find the handful that are very explicit in saying it's a requirement, then you can determine what you want to do there. But over 2,500 hours of clinical experience is a good chunk of time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
So,
great.
And it's directly applicable to med school, hopefully. So, if you were going to be lopsided, if you put 2,500 hours of research and 0 clinical, then you're in trouble. In this case, you should be able to navigate that if you're not able to get research.
Yeah. Okay, I was just going to say, can we take the hate hippies? There you go. Thanks, Veronica.
Okay. All right. Are we required to submit an unaccredited regionally or nationally nursing school classes that I did for LVN, LPN license, or is this exempt since it is unaccredited? Yes, I have a license.
So I know this one for AMCAS off the top of my head. I don't know ACOMAS or Texas off the top of my head.
Okay.
For AMCAS, and go read the handbook because sometimes it varies year to year, and I've only read this year's. I haven't seen next year's yet because it's not out. But currently, their rule of thumb is they want to see every course attempted at a post-secondary institution that offers associate's and bachelor's degrees. So this is where it gets tricky. If you get a nursing school certificate at Columbus State Community College or some others 2 or 4 year university that offers associates and bachelors, even if you just got a certificate, by their rules, by AMCAS's rules, they want to see it. Where if you went to a for-profit institution, like you said, unaccredited, so I think that's the case, where you're just getting the certificate and there aren't any degrees offered at that program, then AMCAS does not need to see it. And even if you list it, would not count those grades in their GPA calculator.
Yeah, I would say ACOMAS is probably going to be the same there. I know in the wording that I'm familiar with, we want to see regionally or nationally accredited courses taken or attempted. And, sometimes this will happen with foreign coursework or, doing post-secondary courses outside of the US where the credits don't align. There's no way to calculate that and factor it into the GPA. And so they're left out, but we still want a document of it to know, yes, I went to a naturopathic school and here's this. It wasn't specified as a post-secondary accredited institution, but here is evidence of that. So yeah, read the fine print on that. You should be able to find very specific and direct language for this requirement on any of the application platforms, I would say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say, I if there is a question at all in your mind, err on the side of submit it. If the application service doesn't want it to be in there, they will take it out.
Yep.
But you definitely don't want it to, you not put it on there and then them come back and say, why didn't you put this on there?
Yeah,
This is, this is bad. You're hiding this and blah, blah, blah. And so I would err on the side of conservatism, include it all, send the transcript. And then if they don't want it or if not going to look at it, then let them make that decision.
Yep.
Yeah. And then so for you, our hate hippie friend, but anyone who's applying in this upcoming cycle, the handbook is your best friend. With AMCAS, it's a PDF that you can download. With Choosio in Texas, they're a little bit more in the 21st century. It's just a dynamic website. What I recommend, and it's not fun, is that before you apply to any application service, read the entire thing.
Yep.
And you're not reading it to try to absorb it all. You're reading it to know roughly what's in there. and then bookmark it and use your beautiful Control F or whatever it is on Apple, Command F, Apple F, I don't know. Use your find function and just type in keywords to go double check specific things.
Yep.
But I mean, I reread the AMCAS handbook every single year. And I mean, I still don't have it memorized. I have parts of it memorized, but it does change. So you can't think of it as like, I'm going to read that guidebook once and I'm good. You have to think of it as I'm going to keep it at my elbow or on my bookmarks bar for the entire time I'm applying so that I'm constantly referring. Because, I mean, you can ask us for interpretation help, but ultimately we're just interpreting whatever they say. Right. So you want to go to the source.
Yep.
Well, I think we've run out of time again.
Indeed.
These hours go by so quickly. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We're always still available. So if you need to chat with us, we're here. We'll be back again next week. For those of you that are going into an application cycle, join us for that free session that we're hosting. We're going to at least get you guys going on some of the concepts and making sure you have the information that you need there. And if nothing else, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.